In the vast expanse of the galaxy, where stars shimmer like distant lanterns in an endless sea of darkness, the Zereth Dominion reigns supreme. For countless millennia, the Dominion, under the icy rule of Overlord Terran, has extended its reach across the cosmos, its influence spreading like a shadow over the light of countless worlds. Terran, a figure as cold and unyielding as the obsidian throne upon which he sits, commands with an iron will. His eyes, sharp and calculating, reflect a mind that has orchestrated the subjugation of entire civilizations with the precision of a master chess player. The Dominion's fleets, vast and formidable, are the embodiment of their technological prowess. These ships, sleek and menacing, glide through the void with an ominous glow, their energy pulsating like the heartbeat of some great, slumbering beast. They are harbingers of conquest, leaving behind only silence and submission in their wake. One day, as Terran surveys his domain from the heart of his grand palace, news arrives of a newly discovered planet on the fringes of their empire Solara. The scouts, seasoned and ever vigilant, report that this world is inhabited by a species known as humans. To Terran, these beings are inconsequential, described as technologically inferior and politically divided, their societies fragmented and weak. The scouts' reports paint a picture of a planet ripe for the taking, a place where resistance would crumble under the mere sight of the Dominion's imposing fleets. As Terran listens, a faint smile plays upon his lips, a rare expression that reveals both confidence and disdain. To him, Solara is just another stepping stone in the Dominion's unending quest for expansion, a minor challenge that promises little more than the satisfaction of an easy victory. With a simple gesture, Terran commands his warships to set course for Solara. These vessels, colossal and majestic, cut through the fabric of space like blades through silk. As they enter Solara's solar system, their sheer size and power dwarf anything the humans have ever conceived. The ships loom over the planet, casting long shadows that dance across Solara's surface, a silent declaration of the Dominion's might. In this moment, the fate of Solara hangs in the balance. The humans, unaware of the storm gathering on their doorstep, continue with their lives, oblivious to the threat that now looms over them. The Dominion, confident in its superiority, prepares to extend its grasp once more, underestimating the resilience and spirit of the world they now seek to conquer. The skies above Solara seemed to darken as the alien fleet descended into the system. Massive warships, their surfaces shimmering with an eerie, pulsating energy, loomed like silent predators over the fragile blue-green planet. Their arrival was not subtle. The air itself seemed to hum with an unnatural resonance, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. Across Solara, humanity watched in stunned disbelief as the alien vessels eclipsed the stars, their sheer size and presence a chilling reminder of how small and vulnerable they truly were. Panic rippled through the world like a tidal wave. Governments scrambled to make sense of the incomprehensible. News networks broadcast images of the alien ships hovering in orbit, their ominous forms casting long shadows over the planet's surface. Streets filled with whispers of fear, of doomsday prophecies, of questions no one could answer. Who were they? What did they want? And most importantly, what would humanity do? In the heart of this chaos, the leaders of Solara's fractured nations convened in a desperate emergency summit. The room was tense, filled with voices that clashed like swords. Old rivalries surfaced, blame was thrown, and fear clouded judgment. But amidst the chaos, one voice rose above the rest. Commander Elias Kane, a man hardened by years of service and known for his calm under pressure, stood firm. His presence alone seemed to anchor the room, his sharp eyes scanning the faces of the panicked leaders. He spoke with measured authority, his deep voice cutting through the noise like a blade. "We don't have time for division," he said, his tone steady but urgent. "If we don't stand together now, we'll fall apart before they even fire a shot. It was Kane who was chosen to represent humanity in the first meeting with the alien invaders. The decision was unanimous. He was the best humanity had, a man of unshakable resolve, a strategist who had faced impossible odds before. But even he could not suppress the knot of unease twisting in his stomach as he boarded the transport ship that would take him to the alien flagship, ominously named the Eclipse Warden. The ship itself was a marvel of alien engineering. Its surface was smooth and black as obsidian, with veins of glowing red energy coursing through it like blood. As Kane's transport docked, he felt the weight of the moment settle heavily on his shoulders. Stepping into the alien vessel was like walking into another world. The air was cool and sterile, the walls lined with strange, shifting symbols that seemed to pulse with a faint, otherworldly light. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the soft hum of the ship's systems. Kane was led to a chamber that seemed to stretch endlessly into the shadows. At its center stood Ambassador Clydehar, the Dominion's envoy. Clydehar was tall and unnervingly thin, his elongated limbs moving with a grace that seemed almost unnatural. His skin was a pale, iridescent silver that shimmered faintly under the dim light, and his eyes cold, black voids seemed to pierce straight through Kane. Despite his alien features, there was something disturbingly human about the smirk that curled his lips as he regarded the human commander. "Commander Elias Kane," Clydehar said, his voice smooth and oily, like silk sliding over steel. "You stand before the might of the Zereth Dominion, the rulers of the stars. Your people have been deemed insignificant. Yet, we are merciful. Submit to us, and you may live. Resist, and your world will burn." The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Kane's jaw tightened, but he did not falter. He stepped forward, meeting Clydehar's gaze with unwavering defiance. "Humanity will never bow," Kane said, his voice steady and resolute. "We may not have your ships, your weapons, or your power. But we have something you'll never understand. We have our freedom. And we won't give it up, not to you, not to anyone." For a moment, there was silence. Then Clydehar's smirk widened, his sharp teeth glinting in a dim light. "Freedom," he repeated, as if tasting the word. "A quaint notion. But freedom will not save you from what is to come." Clydehar stepped closer, his towering form casting a shadow over Kane. "You've made your choice, Commander. And so has the Dominion. We will show your people the cost of defiance. Remember this moment, human. Remember it when your cities crumble and your skies burn." Kane held his ground, refusing to let the alien's words shake him. "We'll remember," he said, his voice like steel. "But so will you. Because Solara will not fall." Clydehar's smirk faded, replaced by a look of cold calculation. Without another word, he turned and disappeared into the shadows, leaving Kane alone in the vast, empty chamber. The meeting was over, but the war had just begun. As Kane returned to Solara, his mind was heavy with the weight of what lay ahead. The alien fleet still hung in the skies above, a constant reminder of the threat they faced. But as he stepped out onto the surface of his home world, feeling the familiar warmth of Solara's sun on his face, he felt a surge of determination. Humanity had been underestimated. And that, he knew, was the Dominion's first mistake. The stillness of space was shattered in an instant. Helios Station, a peaceful research outpost orbiting Solara's largest moon, had stood as a beacon of humanity's curiosity and hope. Its silvery hull reflected the faint light of distant stars, its corridors filled with the hum of life and the quiet determination of scientists and researchers who had dedicated their lives to discovery. They were unarmed, defenseless, their only mission to explore and understand the mysteries of the universe. But the Dominion cared nothing for such ideals. Without warning, a beam of searing energy descended from the void, slicing through the blackness like a blade of light. It struck Helios Station with unrelenting precision. For a moment, there was silence, a terrible, suffocating pause as if the universe itself recoiled from what was about to happen. Then, the station erupted into a blinding inferno. The explosion bloomed outward like a grotesque flower, its fiery petals consuming everything in their path. Pieces of the station, once a proud symbol of human ingenuity, were scattered into the endless abyss, glowing like dying embers before fading into nothingness. Inside, there had been no time for screams, no chance for escape. Hundreds of lives were extinguished in an instant. Brilliant minds, fathers, mothers, sons, daughters, all gone. The destruction was not just an act of war, it was a message. The Dominion had spoken, and their words were written in fire and death. On Solara, the news spread like wildfire. Images of Helios Station's final moments were broadcast across every screen, the fiery explosion replayed over and over, each time cutting deeper into the hearts of those who watched. Families wept for loved ones lost, their grief raw and uncontainable. Children clung to their parents, asking questions no one could answer. In the cities, people gathered in stunned silence, their faces pale and stricken. The world seemed to hold its breath, united in a shared sense of loss and helplessness. But amidst the sorrow, something else began to take root, a spark of defiance. The destruction of Helios Station was not just an attack on a single outpost, it was an attack on all of humanity. The Dominion had underestimated how deeply the loss would cut, how it would ignite a fire in the hearts of those left behind. Grief turned to anger, and anger turned to resolve. In the halls of power, once divided nations now found themselves united by a common enemy. Leaders who had once been bitter rivals sat together at the same table, their differences set aside in the face of a greater threat. The fractured world began to mend itself, piece by piece, as humanity prepared to confront the darkness that loomed over them. The newly formed Solar Defense Coalition, SDC, was born out of necessity, its creation a testament to humanity's resilience. Resources were pooled, technologies shared, and plans drafted. Factories that had once produced goods for profit now churned out weapons of war. Engineers worked tirelessly, their hands trembling with exhaustion but their hearts burning with purpose. Soldiers trained with grim determination, their faces set with the knowledge that the battles ahead would be unlike anything they had ever faced. The memory of Helios Station became a rallying cry. Its name was whispered in homes, shouted in the streets, and etched into the hearts of every man, woman, and child. It was no longer just a place, it was a symbol. A reminder of what had been lost, and of what was worth fighting for. Commander Elias Kane, now a leading figure in the SDC, stood before a gathering of soldiers and civilians. His voice carried the weight of their shared pain, but also the strength of their collective will. They thought they could break us, he said, his words sharp and unyielding. They thought they could make us cower in fear. But they were wrong. Helios Station was not the end, it was the beginning. The beginning of our fight. The beginning of our unity. And the beginning of their downfall. The crowd erupted in cheers, their voices rising like a wave, crashing against the despair that had once threatened to consume them. For the first time since the Dominion's arrival, there was hope, a fragile, flickering light in the darkness, but a light nonetheless. And so, humanity prepared. They knew the road ahead would be long and treacherous, that sacrifices would be demanded of them, and that victory was far from guaranteed. But they also knew that they could not, would not, surrender. The loss of Helios Station had united them in a way nothing else could. It had reminded them of who they were, fragile, flawed, yet unyielding. The Dominion had made their first strike. Now, humanity would make theirs. Deep beneath the surface of Solara, hidden from prying eyes and the ever-watchful gaze of the Dominion, a new hope was being forged. In a labyrinth of secret underground facilities, some of the planet's most brilliant minds worked with feverish intensity. The air was thick with the scent of metal and the hum of machinery, as scientists and engineers toiled day and night, driven by a singular purpose to create a weapon that could stand against the might of the Dominion. The project had begun with a stroke of luck. During a skirmish, a Dominion scout ship had been destroyed, its wreckage scattered across a barren landscape. From these twisted remnants, Solar's experts had salvaged fragments of alien technology, each piece a puzzle waiting to be solved. They studied the alien materials, deciphered the strange symbols etched into the metal, and slowly began to unravel the secrets of the Dominion's advanced systems. The work was grueling and fraught with challenges. Every discovery led to more questions, every breakthrough was met with new obstacles. Yet, the team pressed on, their determination unwavering. They knew that failure was not an option, too much was at stake. The memory of Helios Station's destruction lingered in their minds, a constant reminder of the urgency of their mission. After months of relentless effort, their labor bore fruit. From the depths of their ingenuity and perseverance emerged a revolutionary prototype warship, the Celestial Tempest. Its design was unlike anything humanity had ever created. While Dominion ships were sleek and uniform, the Celestial Tempest boasted an angular, asymmetrical form, its lines sharp and purposeful. This unique design was not merely aesthetic, it was a tactical advantage, crafted to exploit the rigid weaknesses of Dominion technology. The ship's hull was a sleek black, absorbing light, and giving it an almost spectral presence. It seemed to pulse with a mysterious energy, an aura that hinted at the power contained within. The engineers had managed to incorporate elements of the Dominion's own technology, creating a hybrid system that was both familiar and alien. This fusion gave the Celestial Tempest capabilities that far exceeded anything humanity had previously imagined. The day of the unveiling was one of both excitement and trepidation. In a cavernous underground hangar, the Celestial Tempest stood ready, its majestic form a testament to human ingenuity and resilience. A select group of military leaders, scientists, and engineers gathered to witness the momentous occasion. There was a palpable energy in the air, a mix of anticipation and awe. Commander Elias Kane, a figurehead of the resistance, stood before the assembled crowd. His eyes shone with a fierce pride as he looked upon the ship that symbolized humanity's first real chance to fight back. "This is more than just a warship," Kane declared, his voice resonating through the chamber. "The Celestial Tempest represents our courage, our unity, and our refusal to be conquered. It is a beacon of hope, a promise that we will not go quietly into the night." As he spoke, the ship seemed to come alive, its energy signatures flaring with a soft, ethereal glow. The sight was mesmerizing, a silent testament to the possibilities that lay ahead. The crowd erupted into applause, their cheers echoing off the walls, a chorus of defiance and determination. For the first time since the Dominion's arrival, there was a tangible sense of hope. The Celestial Tempest was more than just a weapon, it was a symbol of humanity's resilience, a declaration that they would not bow to tyranny. It was the dawn of a new chapter, one in which humanity would rise to challenge the darkness that threatened to engulf them. With the Celestial Tempest, Solara took its first bold step toward reclaiming its future. The path would be fraught with danger, but the people of Solara were ready. They had a weapon, a plan, and an unbreakable spirit. The fight for freedom had truly begun. The stars above Solara burned cold and distant, their eternal light indifferent to the chaos unfolding in the void. There, on the edge of the planet's orbit, the Dominion fleet loomed like a shadow of doom, their massive ships forming an impenetrable wall of gleaming metal and deadly intent. Their presence was a warning, a display of power meant to crush any remaining hope humanity might cling to. But the Dominion had not counted on the Celestial Tempest. The prototype warship emerged from Solara's atmosphere like a phantom, its sleek black hull blending with the darkness of space. It moved with a grace that seemed almost alive, its angular form cutting through the void with silent defiance. On board, Admiral Lyra Voss stood on the command deck, her gaze fixed on the enemy fleet ahead. Her face was calm, but her eyes burned with determination. She knew the odds they were outnumbered, outgunned, but she also knew what the Tempest was capable of. This was humanity's first true test, and she intended to make it count. The Dominion ships began to shift, their formation tightening as they prepared to engage. Their movements were precise, mechanical, like pieces on a chessboard. They had no reason to fear this lone vessel. To them, humanity was a primitive species, barely worth their attention. But as the Tempest closed the distance, something about its presence seemed to unsettle them. It was too quiet, too confident. "Begin evasive maneuvers," Voss ordered, her voice steady. "Let's show them what we've learned." The Tempest surged forward, its engines flaring with a burst of energy. The Dominion ships opened fire, streams of searing plasma cutting through the darkness. But the Tempest moved like no ship they had ever encountered. It twisted and turned with impossible agility, its movements unpredictable and chaotic. The Dominion's weapons found only empty space where the Tempest had been moments before. Then, the counterattack began. The Tempest unleashed a barrage of energy pulses, each one precisely calculated to disable rather than destroy. The first Dominion cruiser shuddered as its systems flickered and died, its massive form drifting powerless in the void. The second cruiser met the same fate moments later, its weapons silenced, its engines dark. On the command deck of the Tempest, the crew worked with synchronized precision, their hands flying over controls as they executed Voss's bold strategy. The third cruiser tried to retreat, its engines flaring as it attempted to escape the Tempest's reach. But the warship was relentless, its angular silhouette closing the distance with terrifying speed. A final pulse of energy struck the cruiser's hull, and it too fell silent, its lights fading as it drifted into the darkness. The battle had lasted mere minutes, but to those watching, it felt like an eternity. On Solara, millions of eyes were fixed on the skies, their hearts pounding with fear and hope. When the news of the Tempest's victory reached the surface, a wave of emotion swept through the planet. Cheers erupted in the streets, tears streamed down faces, and for the first time in months, people dared to believe that they might have a chance. But the moment of triumph was not without its weight. On the command deck of the Tempest, Admiral Voss stood before the communication console, her expression grim. She knew the Dominion would not take this defeat lightly. But that was precisely why she had to act now, while the shock was still fresh. "Open a channel to the Dominion flagship," she ordered. The screen flickered to life, revealing the cold, alien face of a Dominion commander. His expression was unreadable, but there was a flicker of something in his eyes, confusion, perhaps even doubt. Voss stepped forward, her voice steady and unyielding. "This is Admiral Lyra Voss of the Celestial Tempest," she began. "You came to our world expecting submission. You thought we would kneel before your strength. But today, you have seen what we are capable of. We will not surrender. We will not bow. If you want this war, then know this: humanity will fight, and we will endure." The Dominion commander said nothing, his silence heavy with unspoken thoughts. The channel closed, leaving the Tempest alone in the void once more. Voss turned to her crew, her gaze sweeping over their tired but determined faces. "Let them wonder," she said quietly. "Let them question if they've made a mistake." Far away, in the heart of the Dominion fleet, the silence was deafening. The sight of 3 disabled cruisers hung in the void like a haunting reminder of their failure. For the first time, the Dominion began to question whether they had underestimated this primitive species. The humans were not what they seemed. They were unpredictable, resourceful, and above all, unyielding. The seeds of doubt had been sown. And in the cold, unfeeling vastness of space, doubt could be a dangerous thing. In the heart of Zereth Prime, a world of cold, unyielding architecture and skies dyed in perpetual shades of crimson, the Dominion's capital pulsed with an eerie stillness. Towering spires of obsidian metal stretched into the heavens, their sharp edges cutting through the blood-red clouds like the talons of some ancient beast. The air was thick with the hum of energy, a constant reminder of the immense power that radiated from this place, the seat of the Dominion's empire. Deep within the central spire, in a vast chamber cloaked in shadow, Overlord Terran sat upon his throne. The room was designed to intimidate, its high, vaulted ceilings and cold, reflective walls amplifying every sound, every movement. The Overlord's throne itself was a monolith of black stone, its jagged surface glowing faintly with veins of crimson light. Terran's presence was as imposing as the throne he occupied. His eyes, glowing faintly with an unnatural light, swept over the assembled council with a gaze that seemed to pierce through flesh and bone. The council chamber was silent, save for the faint hum of energy coursing through the walls. Around a long, angular table sat the Dominion's advisors, their faces obscured by the dim light. They were a mix of strategists, scientists, and warlords, each one chosen for their expertise and loyalty to the Dominion. But tonight, attention hung heavy in the air, an unspoken unease that none dared voice. The silence was broken by strategist Xyler, who rose from his seat with a deliberate calm. His movements were precise, his posture rigid, as though every action was calculated. Xyler was known for his sharp mind and his ability to see patterns where others saw chaos. He was not one to speak lightly, and when he did, it was with purpose. Overlord, Xyler began, his voice cutting through the silence like a blade, we must address the events near Solara. The humans have demonstrated a capability far beyond what we anticipated. Their warship, the Celestial Tempest, has proven to be a tactical anomaly. It disabled 3 of our cruisers without destroying them, a deliberate act that speaks to their growing understanding of warfare. Murmurs rippled through the council, a low wave of discontent and disbelief. The other advisors shifted in their seats, their expressions ranging from irritation to outright disdain. To them, the humans were nothing more than insects, an annoyance to be crushed underfoot. Xyler's words were an affront to their pride, a suggestion that these primitives might pose a legitimate threat. Overlord Terran raised a hand, and the murmurs ceased immediately. His voice, low and resonant, echoed through the chamber. Continue, strategist Xyler. Xyler inclined his head in acknowledgement, his expression carefully neutral. The humans are unlike any species we have encountered. Their adaptability is unprecedented. In a matter of months, they have reverse-engineered fragments of our technology and created a weapon capable of outmaneuvering and disabling our ships. Their rapid progress is not a coincidence, it is a trait inherent to their nature. They learn, they adapt, and they evolve at a pace that defies logic. He paused, letting his words sink in. The silence that followed was heavy, the weight of his warning pressing down on the room. But before he could continue, another voice cut through the stillness. Enough, growled Warlord Kale, a towering figure clad in dark armor. His voice was a rumble of barely restrained fury. You give these vermin too much credit, Xyler. They are nothing more than scavengers, playing with scraps of technology they barely understand. A full-scale invasion will crush them before they have a chance to resist. A chorus of agreement rose from the other council members, their voices blending into a cacophony of arrogance and dismissal. Xyler remained standing, his face unreadable, but there was a flicker of frustration in his eyes. He had expected this reaction, but it still grated on him. "Warlord Kale," Xyler said evenly, "underestimating an enemy is the first step toward defeat. The humans are not scavengers, they are survivors. Their ability to adapt and overcome challenges is what has allowed them to endure, even against forces far greater than themselves. If we dismiss them as insignificant, we risk making a grave mistake." Kale slammed a gaunt-lead fist onto the table, the sound reverberating through the chamber. "You speak as though these creatures are our equals, Xyler. They are not. They are weak, disorganized, and primitive. We are the Dominion. Our strength is absolute." The room erupted into argument, voices clashing as the advisors debated the threat posed by humanity. Some sided with Kale, their arrogance blinding them to the possibility of failure. Others, though fewer in number, began to consider Xyler's words, a seed of doubt taking root in their minds. Overlord Terran watched the chaos unfold, his expression unreadable. He let the council argue, their voices rising and falling like a storm. Finally, he raised his hand once more, and the chamber fell silent. "Enough," he said, his voice cold and commanding. "The humans have shown resilience, yes. But resilience is not enough to defy the Dominion. We will proceed with the invasion as planned. Strategist Xyler, your concerns are noted, but they will not deter us. Humanity will fall, as all others have before them." Xyler bowed his head, though his jaw tightened ever so slightly. "As you command, Overlord." But as he returned to his seat, his mind raced. He could see the patterns, the cracks in the Dominion's armor that no one else seemed willing to acknowledge. The humans were not like the others, they were unpredictable, resourceful, and driven by something the Dominion could not understand, hope. And as the council dispersed, their confidence unshaken, Xyler could not shake the feeling that they were walking blindly into a storm. The Dominion had always relied on their overwhelming power, their unyielding structure. But against an enemy like humanity, such rigidity could prove to be their undoing. In the shadows of the council chamber, Xyler's warning lingered, unspoken but undeniable. The Dominion believed themselves invincible, but the cracks were already forming. And in the silence that followed, the faint echo of doubt began to grow. In the orbit above Solara, the skies were alive with movement. The once empty expanse of space had transformed into a bustling hive of activity, a testament to humanity's determination to survive. Massive shipyards, suspended like great iron skeletons against the backdrop of the stars, gleamed with the light of welding torches and the glow of plasma forges. The hum of machinery echoed through the void as engineers, scientists, and workers pushed themselves to their limits, driven by the knowledge that time was running out. The celestial tempest had become more than a ship, it was a symbol, a spark that had ignited a fire within humanity. Now, that fire burned brighter than ever, as nations that had once been divided by borders, ideologies, and centuries of conflict came together with a singular purpose, to build a fleet capable of standing against the Dominion. In one of the largest shipyards, a new vessel slowly came to life. Its hull, a sleek and angular design inspired by the tempest, shimmered under the harsh light of the construction beams. But unlike its predecessor, this ship bore the distinct mark of its creators. The engineers of Solar's northern territories had infused it with their philosophy, durability above all else. Its armor plating was thicker, its energy shields reinforced to withstand prolonged assaults. Every rivet, every panel spoke of a people who had endured the harshest winters and knew the value of resilience. Nearby, another ship took shape, its design a stark contrast. This vessel, crafted by the southern regions, was a masterpiece of speed and precision. Its frame was lighter, its engines more powerful, designed to outmaneuver and outpace any enemy. The engineers here worked with a fierce intensity, their hands moving with practiced skill as they installed advanced propulsion systems and experimental cloaking devices. To them, survival meant striking first and disappearing before the enemy could retaliate. Across the shipyards, the diversity of humanity's ingenuity was on full display. Each vessel was unique, a reflection of the cultures and philosophies that had shaped its creators. And yet, despite their differences, there was a unity to the fleet, a shared purpose that bound them together. These ships were not just weapons, they were a declaration that humanity would not go quietly into the night. Within the shipyards, the air buzzed with energy. Engineers moved with purpose, their voices shouting over the din of machinery. Sparks flew as welders worked tirelessly to seal hulls and secure weapon systems. Test chambers roared with the sound of engines being pushed to their limits, while scientists monitored data streams, their faces lit by the glow of monitors. The smell of ozone and heated metal filled the air, a sharp reminder of the monumental task at hand. In one corner of the shipyard, a group of technicians gathered around a prototype weapon. It was a sleek, menacing device, its surface etched with glowing lines of energy. As the lead engineer activated it, the weapon hummed to life, its power palpable in the air. A beam of concentrated energy shot from its core, cutting through a reinforced target with ease. The technicians erupted into cheers, their faces alight with hope. It was a small victory, but in these times, every success felt monumental. Meanwhile, on the surface of Solara, leaders from across the planet convened in a grand hall. The room, once a symbol of division and political maneuvering, was now a place of unity. Representatives from every nation, every faction, stood shoulder to shoulder, their differences set aside in the face of a common enemy. Maps and schematics covered the tables, while holographic projections of the growing fleet hovered in the air above them. Admiral Lyra Voss stood at the center of the room, her presence commanding yet calm. She spoke with a voice that carried both authority and hope, her words weaving through the room like a thread, binding everyone together. "We have faced the impossible before," she said, her gaze sweeping over the assembled leaders. "And we prevailed. The Dominion believes us to be fractured, weak. But look around you, look at what we have accomplished. This fleet, these ships, are a testament to what we can achieve when we stand united. They may outnumber us, but they will never outmatch our resolve." Her words were met with a wave of determination, the kind that could only come from a people who had nothing left to lose but their freedom. The leaders nodded, their faces set with grim resolve. They knew the cost of failure, but they also understood the strength that came from standing together. Back in orbit, the fleet continued to grow. One by one, the ships were completed, their hulls gleaming as they were released from the shipyards and took their place among the stars. Each vessel was a symbol of hope, a beacon of resistance against the darkness that loomed on the horizon. As the final touches were made to the newest ships, a sense of quiet anticipation settled over the shipyards. The workers paused to watch as the fleet assembled, their hearts swelling with pride. It was a sight that none of them would ever forget, a testament to humanity's ability to rise above its limitations, to adapt and innovate in the face of extinction. And though the Dominion's invasion loomed ever closer, the people of Solaris stood ready. Their fleet, born from desperation and forged in unity, was more than a collection of ships. It was a promise, a vow that no matter how dark the night became, humanity would fight to see the dawn. The vast emptiness of the void was shattered by the arrival of the Dominion's fleet. 500 colossal ships, their surfaces gleaming with a sinister, metallic sheen, moved as one, a tide of darkness sweeping inexorably towards Solara. Their formations were precise, their movements cold and mechanical, like a predator closing in on its prey. The crimson glow of their engines cast an ominous hue across the asteroid belt they approached, illuminating the jagged rocks that floated silently in space. From the shadows of the belt, humanity's fleet emerged a mere 40 ships, dwarfed by the Dominion's armada. Yet, these vessels were not ordinary. Each one bore the scars of desperation and innovation, their designs a chaotic blend of ingenuity and determination. At the head of the fleet was the Celestial Tempest, its sleek, angular hull a stark contrast to the Dominion's monolithic designs. It moved like a predator itself, its engines humming with restrained power, its weapons primed and ready. On the bridge of the Tempest, Admiral Lyra Voss stood resolute, her sharp eyes fixed on the display before her. The Dominion's fleet stretched across the screen, a wall of overwhelming force. Around her, the crew worked with quiet intensity, their faces pale but determined. They all knew the odds, but there was no room for fear now. Lyra's voice cut through the tense silence, steady and commanding. "Hold your positions," she ordered, her gaze never wavering. "Wait for my signal. They think we're weak. Let's show them how wrong they are." As the Dominion's fleet drew closer, the air on the Tempest's bridge grew heavier, every second stretching into an eternity. The Dominion ships moved with eerie precision, their formations tight and unyielding, like a wall of steel advancing through the void. But Lyra saw the flaw in their perfection. Their rigidity was their weakness, and humanity's strength lay in its unpredictability. "Now," Lyra commanded, her voice sharp and decisive. "Engage." The silence of space was broken by a sudden explosion of light and sound as humanity's fleet surged forward. The Tempest led the charge, its engines flaring as it weaved through the asteroid field with impossible grace. Behind it, the other ships followed, their movements chaotic and unpredictable, like a swarm of fireflies darting through the dark. The Dominion responded with brutal efficiency. Waves of plasma fire erupted from their ships, filling the void with deadly energy. The asteroid belt became a battlefield, the once silent rocks now shattered and spinning wildly as they were caught in the crossfire. But humanity's fleet was ready. They danced through the chaos, their ships twisting and turning with a fluidity that the Dominion could not match. The Tempest was a blur of motion, its sleek form darting between enemy ships with surgical precision. Its weapons came alive, beams of searing energy lancing out to strike the Dominion vessels. But unlike the Dominion, humanity's goal was not destruction, it was disruption. The Tempest's weapons targeted engines and communication arrays, crippling the Dominion ships and throwing their formations into disarray. On the bridge of the Tempest, Lyra barked orders, her voice calm but urgent. "Focus on their command ships. Break their lines. Keep moving, don't let them pin us down." The Dominion's fleet began to falter, their rigid formations unraveling as humanity's fleet exploited every weakness. Smaller ships darted in and out of the chaos, using the asteroids as cover to launch surprise attacks. Missiles streaked through the void, detonating with blinding flashes that sent shockwaves rippling through the Dominion's ranks. One Dominion cruiser, a massive, hulking beast of a ship, turned its attention to the Tempest. Its weapons charged, glowing with deadly energy, but the Tempest was already moving. It darted beneath the cruiser, its engines flaring as it skimmed the surface of the enemy ship. The Tempest's weapons fired in rapid succession, cutting through the cruiser's armor and disabling its engines. The massive ship drifted, powerless, as the Tempest sped away, already seeking its next target. The battle raged on, the void alight with the fury of war. Humanity's fleet fought with a ferocity born of desperation, their unconventional tactics keeping the Dominion off balance. But the cost was high. One by one, humanity's ships began to fall, their hulls torn apart by the relentless assault. Each loss was a blow, but the survivors pressed on, their determination unshaken. In the heart of the battle, the Tempest continued to lead, its movements a symphony of chaos and precision. Lyra's voice guided her crew, her commands sharp and unwavering. She could feel the weight of every decision, every life lost, but she pushed the doubt aside. There was no room for hesitation now. As the Dominion's fleet began to regroup, Lyra saw her chance. "All ships, focus fire on their flagship," she ordered, her voice ringing with authority. "We take that out, and the rest will crumble." The Tempest surged forward, its weapons blazing as it targeted the Dominion's flagship. The massive ship loomed ahead, its dark hull bristling with weapons. The Tempest's crew worked in unison, their movements precise as they unleashed a relentless barrage. The other ships followed, their combined firepower overwhelming the flagship's defenses. The Dominion's flagship shuddered under the assault, its hull cracking and splitting as explosions rippled across its surface. Finally, with a blinding flash, the ship erupted in a massive explosion, sending debris hurtling into the void. The Dominion's fleet faltered, their cohesion shattered as panic spread through their ranks. On the bridge of the Tempest, a cheer erupted, but Lyra's expression remained grim. The battle was far from over, and the cost had been immense. But for the first time, humanity had shown the Dominion that they were not prey, they were fighters. As the Dominion's fleet began to retreat, the surviving ships of humanity's fleet regrouped, their battered hulls a testament to their resilience. The void fell silent once more, the echoes of the battle fading into the darkness. And though the war was far from over, the Battle of the Void would be remembered as a moment of defiance, a spark of hope in the face of overwhelming darkness. The battlefield was a graveyard of shattered ships and drifting debris. The once pristine void was now littered with the remnants of war-twisted metal, broken hulls, and the faint, flickering lights of dying vessels. The silence that followed the chaos was haunting, broken only by the faint crackle of damaged comms and the distant hum of engines. Humanity's fleet, battered and bloodied, hung in the void like survivors clinging to the edges of a storm. Their numbers had dwindled, their losses immeasurable, but they still stood. At the center of it all loomed the Dominion's flagship, the Eternal Sovereign. It was a monstrous vessel, its size dwarfing even the largest of humanity's ships. Its dark, angular hull seemed to absorb the light around it, casting an eerie shadow over the battlefield. The ship was damaged, its once impenetrable armor now scarred with the marks of humanity's desperate assault. Fires burned along its surface, sending plumes of smoke spiraling into the void, but it still radiated power, a wounded beast refusing to fall. On the bridge of the Celestial Tempest, Admiral Lyra Voss stood amidst the wreckage of her own command center. The air was thick with the acrid smell of burned circuits, and sparks rained down from exposed wires. Her crew moved with grim efficiency, their faces pale and streaked with soot, their eyes betraying the exhaustion that clawed at them. But there was a fire in their gaze, a stubborn refusal to give in. Lyra's voice was steady, cutting through the haze of fatigue. "We've come this far," she said, her tone resolute. "We're not stopping now. Prepare the boarding teams. We're taking the Eternal Sovereign." The plan was madness, and everyone knew it. Boarding a Dominion flagship, even a damaged one, was a suicide mission. But Lyra's words carried weight, and her crew obeyed without hesitation. They had seen what she was capable of, and they trusted her with their lives. The Tempest moved closer to the Eternal Sovereign, its engines flaring as it maneuvered through the debris field. The Dominion ship loomed larger with every passing second, its jagged surface like the hide of some ancient leviathan. As the Tempest approached, the boarding pods were launched, small, armored vessels that streaked through the void like arrows. They struck the hull of the Eternal Sovereign, their impact sending shudders through the massive ship. Inside one of the pods, Lyra stood with her team, her pulse steady despite the chaos around her. The air was tense, the silence broken only by the hum of the pod's engines. The soldiers around her gripped their weapons tightly, their faces set with grim determination. They knew what was at stake. This wasn't just a mission, it was humanity's last chance to turn the tide. The pod breached the Dominion ship's hull with a deafening crash, the airlock sealing behind them as they entered the beast. The corridors of the Eternal Sovereign were dark and foreboding, the walls lined with alien architecture that seemed almost alive. Strange, pulsing lights cast eerie shadows, and the air was thick with the hum of machinery. The Dominion's presence was palpable, an oppressive weight that seemed to press down on them with every step. Lyra led the way, her weapon at the ready, her senses sharp. The team moved with precision, their footsteps muffled by the strange material of the floor. They encountered resistance almost immediately. Dominion soldiers, their forms tall and imposing, their movements unnervingly fluid. The battle was fierce and brutal, the confined corridors amplifying every sound, every cry of pain. But Lyra's team fought with a ferocity born of desperation. They moved like a single entity, covering each other, pushing forward with relentless determination. For every soldier they lost, they took down two of the enemy. The Dominion's precision was no match for humanity's raw tenacity. As they pushed deeper into the ship, the resistance grew weaker. The Eternal Sovereign was wounded, its systems failing, its crews scattered and disorganized. Lyra could feel the shift, the sense that the tide was turning in their favor. Finally, they reached the command center, a cavernous room filled with alien technology, its walls lined with glowing panels and strange, shifting symbols. At the center of the room stood the Dominion commander. He was tall and imposing, his armor gleaming even in the dim light. His eyes, cold and calculating, locked onto Lyra as she entered. There was no fear in his gaze, only disdain, as if he couldn't fathom that these humans had dared to challenge him. Lyra stepped forward, her weapon trained on him. Her voice was calm but laced with steel. "Your fleet is broken. Your ship is ours. Surrender." The commander stared at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, he lowered his weapon. The room seemed to exhale, the tension breaking as the Dominion soldiers around him followed suit. The battle was over. Back on the Tempest, the news spread like wildfire. The Eternal Sovereign had been captured, its commander taken prisoner. Cheers erupted across the ship, a sound of pure, unfiltered triumph. For the first time, humanity had struck a blow that the Dominion could not ignore. They had proven that they were not weak, not insignificant. They were a force to be reckoned with. As the Dominion fleet began to retreat, the battered remnants of humanity's fleet regrouped. The sight of the Eternal Sovereign, now under human control, was a beacon of hope in the darkness. It was more than a victory, it was a turning point, a moment that would be remembered for generations to come. On the bridge of the Tempest, Lyra stood in silence, her gaze fixed on the stars. She knew the cost of their triumph, the lives that had been lost to make it possible. But she also knew what it meant. Humanity had faced the abyss and refused to fall. They had challenged the most powerful empire in the galaxy and won. And though the war was far from over, the tides had shifted. For the first time, the future didn't seem so dark. The chamber of the Dominion High Council was a cavernous, foreboding space, carved from black stone that seemed to drink in the light. Massive pillars loomed like silent sentinels, their surfaces etched with ancient symbols that glowed faintly, pulsing like the heartbeat of some sleeping giant. At the far end of the room, seated atop a throne of jagged obsidian, was Overlord Terran. Terran's presence was overwhelming. His armor, a dark, shimmering carapace that appeared almost alive, reflected the dim light in ghostly patterns. His eyes burned with a cold, golden fire, betraying the storm of emotions raging within him. The defeat at the hands of humanity was a wound to his pride, a stain on his legacy that no amount of conquest could erase. The galaxy had always bowed before the Dominion, yet now, a species he had deemed insignificant had dared to strike him down. The silence in the chamber was suffocating, broken only by the measured footsteps of strategist Xyler as he approached the throne. Xyler's form was wiry and angular, his movements deliberate, his face a mask of calm calculation. He carried no weapons, yet his words were sharper than any blade, a fact that even Terran respected. "My lord," Xyler began, his voice smooth and measured, "we must face the truth. Humanity is not the weak, disorganized rabble we once believed them to be. They are adaptable, resourceful, and now, emboldened. If we continue this war, we risk strengthening them further." Terran's gaze snapped to Xyler, his expression a mixture of anger and disbelief. "You would have me negotiate with these insects?" His voice was a low growl, filled with venom. "They are beneath us. Their victory was a fluke, a moment of luck. They cannot stand against the full might of the Dominion." "And yet, they have," Xyler replied, unflinching. "They captured the Eternal Sovereign. They forced our fleet to retreat. If we press forward now, we risk losing more than just ships. We risk losing the perception of our invincibility. Humanity has shown the galaxy that we can bleed." Terran's hands clenched the arms of his throne, the metal groaning under the pressure. His pride screamed at him to crush humanity, to erase them from existence and reclaim the Dominion's supremacy. But deep down, a small voice whispered the truth. Xyler was right. The humans were dangerous, not because of their numbers or their technology, but because of their will. They fought like creatures with nothing to lose, and that made them unpredictable. "What do you propose?" Terran asked at last, his voice heavy with reluctance. "A meeting," Xyler said simply. "A show of strength, but also an opening. We offer them terms. If they refuse, we will have lost nothing. But if they accept, we gain time. Time to study them. Time to prepare." Terran leaned back in his throne, his golden eyes narrowing as he considered the strategist's words. The idea of sitting across from a human, treating them as equals, was abhorrent to him. But the alternative, risking another defeat, was even more unbearable. "Very well," he said at last, his voice cold and sharp. "Send word to their leaders. I will meet their envoy. But make no mistake, Xyler, this is not a surrender. This is a delay. Humanity will learn its place." Xyler bowed his head, a faint smile playing on his lips. "As you command, my lord." As Terran watched the strategist leave, the weight of his decision settled over him like a mantle of iron. The fate of the galaxy now hung in the balance, and for the first time in his long reign, he felt the unsettling grip of uncertainty. Zereth Prime was a world of stark beauty, its surface a vast expanse of crystalline plains that shimmered under a pale, alien sunday. Towering spires of translucent stone rose from the ground like the fingers of some ancient god, their surfaces refracting light into a kaleidoscope of colors. The air was thin and cold, carrying with it a faint hum that seemed to resonate in the bones, a reminder that this was a world shaped by the Dominion's will. In the shadow of one of these great spires, a meeting had been arranged. A single human vessel rested on the crystalline surface, its sleek, utilitarian design a stark contrast to the organic elegance of the Dominion's architecture. From its open hatch stepped Dr. Alina Reyes, humanity's chosen envoy. Alina was a striking figure, her presence commanding despite her slight frame. Her dark hair was pulled back, and her sharp eyes surveyed the alien landscape with a mixture of awe and determination. She wore no armor, carried no weapons, but her steps were steady, her head held high. She knew the weight of the task before her. This was not just a negotiation, it was a moment that could define the future of her species. Ahead of her, a delegation of Dominion elites awaited, their forms tall and imposing. At their center stood Overlord Terran, his golden eyes fixed on her with an intensity that could have pierced steel. He did not move as she approached, his expression unreadable, but the tension in the air was palpable. When Alina reached the designated spot, she stopped, meeting Terran's gaze without flinching. For a moment, the two stood in silence, the weight of their respective civilizations pressing down on them. Then, she spoke. "Overlord Terran," she said, her voice clear and steady, "I come not as an enemy, but as a representative of humanity. We seek peace, but make no mistake, we will defend our freedom with everything we have." Terran's eyes narrowed, his expression hardening. "Peace," he said, his voice a low rumble. "Your kind speaks of peace, yet you have spilled Dominion blood. You have defied us." "We defended ourselves," Alina replied, her tone firm but calm. "We did what we had to do to survive. And we will continue to do so if necessary. But we would rather build a future where survival is not a constant battle. Where our two peoples can coexist." Terran studied her, his golden eyes searching for weakness. But what he saw instead was strength and unyielding resolve that reminded him of the Dominion's own rise to power. Humanity was young, but they were fierce, and their ingenuity was undeniable. They had faced the might of the Dominion and emerged not unscathed, but unbroken. "You speak boldly for one so small," Terran said at last, his tone laced with a grudging respect. "But words are easy. Actions are what matter." Alina nodded. "Then let our actions speak for us. We have shown that we will fight when pushed, but we have also shown that we are willing to talk, to find common ground. The choice is yours, Overlord. Continue this war, and we will both suffer. Or take this chance to build something greater." The silence that followed was heavy, the weight of the galaxy pressing down on both of them. Finally, Terran stepped forward, his towering form casting a long shadow over Alina. For a moment, it seemed as though he might strike her down, his pride refusing to yield. But then, he extended a hand. "Very well," he said, his voice low but firm. "Let us see if your kind is as wise as it is bold." Alina took his hand, her grip steady despite the enormity of the moment. Around them, the Dominion elites shifted uncomfortably, but none dared to speak. The first step had been taken. As the two leaders stood beneath a crystalline spire, the light of Zereth Prime's sun refracted around them, casting the scene in a radiant glow. It was a fragile moment, a delicate balance between hope and uncertainty. But for the first time in generations, the galaxy had a chance at peace. And though the wounds of war would take time to heal, the seeds of a new era had been sown. The signing of the Galactic Accord took place in the heart of the galaxy, on a neutral world of Orion, a planet of endless skies and crystalline seas that reflected the stars above like a mirror. The great hall where the ceremony unfolded was a marvel of unity itself, constructed from materials donated by dozens of species, each contributing a piece of their culture to the structure. The walls shimmered with iridescent hues, shifting like liquid light, while intricate carvings and glowing symbols told the stories of civilizations long past and newly joined. Representatives from every corner of the galaxy gathered in the hall, their forms as varied as the stars themselves. Some towered over the others, their frames adorned with gleaming armor or flowing robes. Others were small and delicate, their translucent skin catching the light like fragile glass. The air was alive with the hum of languages, hundreds of voices blending into a symphony of diversity. At the center of it all stood humanity's delegation, led by Dr. Alina Reyes. She was no longer the envoy who had faced Overlord Terran on Zereth Prime. She was now a symbol of humanity's resilience and determination, a figure respected even by those who had once dismissed her species as insignificant. Her presence was calm yet commanding, her gaze steady as she looked out over the assembly. The Galactic Accord was more than a treaty, it was a promise. A promise that no species would stand above another, that every voice would be heard, and that the horrors of war would never again tear the galaxy apart. As Alina stepped forward to sign the document, the room fell silent. The weight of the moment was palpable, the air thick with anticipation. Her hand moved with deliberate precision, the pen gliding across the parchment-like material that bore the Accord's words. When she finished, she placed the pen down and stepped back, her heart swelling with a mixture of pride and hope. One by one, the other representatives followed, their signatures adding to the tapestry of unity that the Accord represented. When the last signature was placed, a low hum resonated through the hall, the sound of ancient machinery embedded in the walls. Above the assembly, a holographic image of the galaxy appeared, its countless stars shining brightly. Lines of light connected the worlds of the signatories, forming a web of unity that spread across the void. The crowd erupted in applause, a sound that echoed like thunder through the hall. It was a moment of triumph, a testament to what could be achieved when differences were set aside in favor of cooperation. For humanity, it was the culmination of a journey that had begun in isolation and fear, a journey that had led them to become not just survivors, but leaders. 1 year later, the galaxy was a different place. The scars of war still lingered, but the seeds of unity were beginning to bloom. On a bustling space station orbiting Orion, the future was already taking shape. The station was a marvel of engineering, its sprawling corridors and open plazas teeming with life. It was a place where species from across the galaxy came together, their cultures blending in ways that were once unimaginable. Markets bustled with vendors selling goods from distant worlds, the air filled with the sense of alien spices and the sounds of music played on instruments no human could name. In one of the station's parks, under the glow of artificial sunlight, human and alien children played together. The park was a vibrant space, filled with towering trees whose leaves shimmered like gemstones and flowers that sang softly when touched. The laughter of the children was a universal language, a sound that transcended the barriers of species and culture. A young human boy chased after a girl with scales that glinted like silver in the light. She giggled as she darted away, her movements quick and graceful. Nearby, a group of alien children with translucent wings hovered above the ground, their soft hums blending with the laughter below. A human girl joined them, her feet leaving the ground as she was lifted by the station's low gravity, her delighted squeals mingling with theirs. Adults watched from the edges of the park, their faces reflecting a mixture of wonder and hope. Among them was Dr. Alina Reyes, her expression soft as she observed the scene. She had fought for this moment, had dreamed of a galaxy where such unity was possible. And now, she saw it unfolding before her eyes. Beside her stood Overlord Terran, his imposing form seeming out of place among the peaceful surroundings. Yet his expression was not one of disdain, it was one of contemplation. His golden eyes followed the children's movements, his mind grappling with the changes that had come to the galaxy. "They are stronger than I thought," he said quietly, his voice carrying a note of grudging respect. Alina turned to him, her gaze steady. "Strength comes in many forms, Overlord. Humanity's greatest strength has always been its ability to adapt, to learn, and to hope." Terran nodded slowly, his gaze returning to the children. "Perhaps there is hope for us all." As the two leaders stood in silence, the park around them seemed to glow brighter, the laughter of the children rising like a song. It was a moment of peace, a glimpse of what the galaxy could become. The story ended not with a roar of engines or the clash of weapons, but with a quiet promise of a brighter future. Humanity, once isolated and underestimated, had become a symbol of hope, a beacon for a galaxy that had learned the value of unity. And as the stars shone beyond the station's walls, They seemed to whisper a single truth: the journey was far from over, but together, the galaxy could face whatever lay ahead.